WWE 2K23 developer Bryan Williams was recently on the Pro Wrestling Shoot podcast, where he gave a lot of insights, a lot of details regarding 2K23, updates that we could still see in the game, and spoke to the community directly. Here's a breakdown of everything you need to know. By the way, as we get started and go through this list, do me a favor, go and subscribe to the Pro Wrestling Shoot, who did the interview. The link to their channel is going to be in the description, as well as their Twitter. Go follow those guys. They did a great job. It was like over an hour long, talking to Bryan Williams about the ins and outs of the games. Even your boy Matt was able to get some questions in and get some answers. Yeah! Let's first talk about my faction. No, not the most popular thing in the world to talk about. Bryan gave some insights to my faction, and that it's a mode that he personally is really enjoying. I don't totally agree, but everyone likes what they like. But Bryan did give some insight in that with my faction and he himself playing the mode, he even sees some opportunities for some updates and fixes to it that he has even gone to the My Faction team to address. He talked about how it needs some improvements. He has made some suggestions, but as we get these patches and updates along the way, we will see My Faction get some improvements as we go. I don't think that this is a mode personally that is going to go anywhere. I think 2K very much wants this to work. It's a great way to monetize on their end from a business perspective. I just think that for fans, it hasn't quite gripped the majority of us the way I think 2K wants it to. One quick thing from where I'm sitting, what I would do with my faction for next year, Bryan, if you're listening, you're probably not, you're a busy guy. But what I would do is try to implement something with building your roster out as the goal for collecting the cards. Rather than just focusing in on having your 4-person faction, I would personally try to get it so that we are completing these weekly challenges. We are going through all of this week over week to get these cards because we are trying to build out a robust roster. And the goal being we want to fill up our roster slots with legends and current talent and champions and so on. Food for thought, but it looks like my faction is here to stay. A lot of great questions did come up from the community live during the podcast, one of them being match types. Specifically, special guest referee, slobber knocker came up, even with the creation suite as well, but the implementation of new match types or new match types coming into the existing game of 2K23. Bryan essentially said that it's not possible. It's not a never say never, it can't be done, but with special guest referee as an example, he hears everybody loud and clear that this is something that the community wants. He even jokingly was like, you don't say, people want special guest referee. But the question was asked of like, can we get special guest ref in 2K23? The game is already printed and done, it's out there. And the answer is essentially no. Reason being is that the development and what it takes to put a match type together or add in something like that on the engineering side is very complex. And Bryan alluded to this throughout the interview that adding something in, even the DLC, but adding something, adding an update, adding a character, an arena, all those things, he did talk about how you have to go to all the different teams that they work with to make sure that one, is this even possible to do? And two, is this going to break anything by adding this in? So as fans, we sit here and we want special guest referee, just patch it in and throw it in there. We've had it 10, 15 years ago. Why can't we get it in the games now? The hardware is so much better and it should be a slam dunk. Bryan gave good feedback that this simply just isn't really possible. It's not as simple as just adding it back in. But he does hear the community that special guest ref is something we want. Another thing that came up, another question that came up was from yours truly. I was sitting there, I was enjoying the show. It was really well done. I was able to ask a couple of questions. One of them I brought up for a lot of us was going to be the conversation around theme songs, tracks, entrances, specifically Degeneration X and Evolution. I used them as an example and I asked, why are tracks, theme songs, entrances essentially for DX and Evolution as examples not in this year's game? Why are they excluded even though we've had them in recent memory? I kind of poked and said, I'm assuming that it's a licensing issue. Bryan gave a great answer back to this and said effectively that, yeah, it's licensing and contracts. That's the main issue. I don't totally understand. I'm not a developer, so how could I understand? But just as a fan, as somebody who plays the game like you, I still scratch my head because the DX theme song is there. The entrance is there. They've given us like 80% of it up to this point, but the track itself is not there, even though community members like What's the Status, iWorld's Finest, and others have been able to post those creations of HBK, Triple H, DX versions that give you the full entrance motions and the tracks themselves. So I'm still left scratching my head why this isn't in the game. It must be a licensing issue, a contract issue, something with WWE, but I thought I'd ask anyways. For future games, future updates to the game, to the franchise, stuff looks promising. What was great to hear from Bryan is that he did say, he's like, we hear you, we listen, we try to listen. They take the feedback from not only from, tickets that are coming in from across platforms for players regarding big issues that need to be fixed. They look at social media, they look at Reddit threads, they see all those things, he said, and they take that feedback in to see what's possible to fix either in this year's current game, or is it something that they can look to implement or improve on in the next year's title. People were asking in the chat regarding double title entrances as well as blood mechanics. Also was a big one that came up because people are wanting to have that blood dripping on the mat. Bryan did talk about how that is something that's really cool, that he likes having in there, that he wishes that is going to be in there. It is something that they can totally look at to update and improve in the next year's game. Again, these are not confirmations here, but these are things that from Bryan's perspective, he hopes that they can add and implement going forward. The other piece was double title entrances. We know that double title matches don't work quite right in the game, but the motion itself, having the generic double title entrance for everybody, Bryan did speak on this, and that again, it's something he hopes that they can work towards improving in the next year's game. And I'm glad to hear those things, that at least they're gonna look at them for better blood physics and mechanics and how it looks and how it drips on the mat. And he, as the lead developer, wants that in the game. Him discussing how double title entrances, they want the motions to improve. They want to improve upon those things because we got it back this year and I was excited. I know a lot of players were excited, and then we got it and it's kind of let down because it's not really flushed out that much. So it is one of those things where I'm like, great, we got it, but it doesn't have the depth that I think players are looking for, where we wanted specific entrance motions for the likes of Randy Orton, John Cena, Roman Reigns, and so on, and then even just generic templates to be able to leverage for men and the female superstars. Personally, I wish that double title entrances, because of what we got, where it is one generic motion, I almost wish they did not put it in this year's game, and then they held back and tried to improve it and give us something bigger in 2K24. But I understand putting it in this year to see how is it received by players, and also how does it work? Is it working okay or correctly? It's almost like you have to test these things in the game, see how they do, and then they can try to improve it going forward. This is where I think a lot of it comes into over the years, where you know how we have seen match types, modes get additions, or things are just literally pulled out of it. You can kind of see where it's things they want to be able to test, add into the game, see how they do, see how they're received, and see if they were just working, and whether or not they're going to build off of that in the next year and the year after that. Okay, universe mode. I asked about universe mode. One, I said to Bryan, I want to draft. I want to draft in universe mode. And Bryan took out his notepad and then he wrote it down. And Bryan said, that's not a bad idea. My reaction was, yeah. So you never know. But another question I asked regarding universe mode was to do with your tag teams, your factions, your roster save. Going from exhibition, let's play, having the tag teams, the roster, the factions all set up there, and that currently it doesn't transfer over to universe mode. For me, it's something that's frustrating because you set up a universe and you have to constantly redo the tag teams, the roster, all those details, and it's a lot of work. And to me, I was like, man, couldn't we just have it where I want to just import my save from exhibition and port it over to universe mode? Bryan addressed this on the show. Bryan said universe has its own system from what we get in play or exhibition. They're two separate things, and Bryan talked about this throughout the interview, mentioning the team for my faction, the team for universe, the team for my GM. There are separate pods, there are separate teams working on the game that obviously come together and overlap, but there are dedicated teams that work on all of these modes. And so while my ask seems simple enough, clearly from an engineering perspective, from an implementation side, it's very, very cumbersome. Bryan then said that it'd be neat to be able to have that but it is a big add. It is very, very tricky and difficult to do things like that. To have a save go from this or the roster that you have in Exhibition and bring it over to Universe, it's a big, big ask. It's not that it's impossible to do it, but it's a large task. So I appreciated the answer and the feedback for that one. Okay, let's talk about some exciting stuff regarding some updates that we could still be seeing this year, and it surrounds the DLC and the upcoming updates. Number one, Bryan did say several times that they are constantly patching, fixing, doing updates to this year's game, to the current game. They haven't just, finished and they're moving on to 2K24. They're still actively supporting it. They look at the list of fixes and updates they need to do from the ones that are very, very critical, and they kind of work their way down, it seems. During the show, one of the hosts did ask regarding patches and the updates that they do tend to line up with the DLC, don't they, when they want to do kind of a larger fix and not just hot fixes that we see periodically. Bryan did confirm, yes, they do tend to roll out larger fixes with the DLC because they're updating and uploading the DLC content in there, from the superstars to the moves and everything else. So it should, number one, give us some hope that we are going to see some larger fixes around the time of DLC pack number 2, number 3, and so on. But with the DLC, Bryan mentioned a lot of different stuff here that was really, really cool. He said for the first DLC pack that did come out, where we got Hit Row and we got the Steiner brothers, that on the moveset side, they introduced 39 new moves for this DLC. But he said with DLC number 3 that is coming out later this summer, they're looking at 52 new moves that are going to be added when this DLC number 3 drops. And just so you know, the DLC number 3 pack that is coming out is the Race to NXT pack, coming out June 14th, where you're gonna get Harley Race, Ivy Nile, Tony D'Angelo, Trick Williams, and Wendy Chu. But an interesting thing that Bryan did talk about and mention, and kind of teased it, was a new move that is going to be coming out with DLC number 3. It's a move that is new, that has been tested, and it is different. Bryan said the following: it's in DLC 3, a character in that pack will be equipped with a move that is brand new of its type. It's not a move that's been done before in terms of functionality. It's somewhat of a test. It works. It'll be in DLC pack 3. It's a new move that will hopefully become a standard moving forward. No idea what this is. No idea what this would look like. Let me know in the comments, what do you think we would get from a new move? And also for Bryan to mention this, that he's very excited and it's about a single move that's in the game, it must be something fairly substantial. And if it's something new that they have completely created, it's got to be pretty unique in terms of how it functions and how it works and delivers. I have one guess. My only guess is this was brought up in interviews a little while ago, several months ago before the game came out, where either it was Bryan Williams, Lionel Jinx, or both of them were talking in interviews about things they want in the future games. One of them being over the top rope splashes to multiple superstars. So if a Ricochet was to do a move over the top rope, he would do a full splash onto 2, 3, 4 different superstars and take them all out. That's my only guess here, because if it is just a standard move for Trick Williams or Ivy Nile or something, the animation would have to be completely different. So I kind of wonder if it might be that, but let me know what your guesses might be. Now, sticking with DLC patches and updates, Bryan did say that we should expect more stars added in for free this year. Bryan said that free roster additions will be made available sooner rather than later. Quote, stay on Twitter. So in the coming months, we're gonna get more superstars added to the roster. Who is this going to be is the big magical question. My thoughts are what we have talked about in previous videos, where it has been pulled out of the game files by like iWorld's Finest, for example, that The Fiend Bray Wyatt, Mia Yim, Candice LeRae, we've seen their character models, we've seen the files that have popped up for those characters to be in the game. There are placeholders in there and they tie in with the DLC being released. I think easy ones, because we've downloaded them already from Community Creations, are going to be Mia Yim and Candice LeRae. I think there's a very good chance we see them, but I would be really pumped like we saw The Fiend, or we got Tegan Knox added in. We got more stars added into the roster. This is awesome news because they did this last year with 2K22. They did give us a big patch with DLC free characters into the game. You got King Booker and you got King Corbin. The NXT 2.0 arena was added in. Dominic Dijak was added into the game. They did a lot there for the community. That was the type of stuff where I was surprised, and I really, really liked that they did that. So we are going to get more free superstars added in this year. I think that's a huge win, and kudos to Brian and the team for adding that in. I wonder if it's going to be Mia Yim, Candice LeRae, like we mentioned, or are they also going to give us some of the My Rise characters that you have to unlock? My Rise is long, and you do get the Live Arena, the Raw Arena, Jean-Paul Levesque, Molly Holly. There's a lot of unlockables in there. I wonder if they're going to just make those for free and put them in directly into the game, and I hope they do. Question was asked regarding the DLC and Wade Barrett, and which version of Wade Barrett we're going to get in the game. Brian did confirm that it's not the Nexus version, and it's not the Bad News Barrett version. It's the in-between. That's the one, like you can see here, where Wade Barrett has the coat and the rose and he flicks it off of him. That's the one that we are supposed to be getting in the game. Wade Barrett is coming in the Bad News U pack. That's the 5th DLC. It's the last one, which is going to be a long time away. But you're getting Andre Chase, Damon Kemp, Eve Torres, Nathan Frazier, and Wade Barrett. Now you may be saying, I wish I was getting Bad News Barrett. This stinks. Oh, I wanted the Nexus version of Wade Barrett. And obviously you could change the attire so that he has the Nexus attire or he has the Bad News Barrett attire as well. So this is actually, in my opinion, a good choice because we're going to have the freedom in creations to update Wade Barrett how we want for all of his different looks. This was a great interview, and for more WWE 2K23 coverage for you, click this video because I'm going through OMG moments you can do in the game you got to try out. See ya.